Newspapers now still focusing on the ongoing arm wrestling match, if you like, between the government and trade unions. Unions want to stage a new demonstration this Thursday against a controversial labour reform, but the government, they threatened to ban protests after last week's violence. That's the crux of it, isn't it, Flo?
That's right. And Le Parisien asked the million-dollar question, are we going towards a protest ban? Because the protest last week was really marred by violence. Remember, there were those very impressive images of a children's hospital here in Paris being vandalized. Now, Le Parisien is quite disappointed with the current status quo, saying, you know, discussions are really turning into a farce. The latest thing is that police have called on trade unions to hold a static demonstration, essentially one that doesn't move. Unions have slammed the door on this idea, and you can see this cartoon in Aujourd'hui en France, this guy saying, should we hold a static or a mobile demonstration? And the other guy saying, well, for now we're turning in circles and no one is backing down. And as I said, Aujourd'hui en France, quite disappointed with the situation, which it says has really suffocated French people for 3 months now.
Communist paper accusing the government of really waging a war of attrition now.
That's right. L'Humanité says the government is brutally suffocating the protest movement, and it seems to be working. It's wearing down the resistance movement. On the front page here of L'Humanité, you can see that it's saying that this labor reform is turning into a minority within a growing number of trade unions. It seems to be less and less on the top of the agenda. Now, La Croix, the Catholic paper, interviews Pierre Gattaz. You might be familiar with him. He's the leader of the MEDEF, the main union of boss representatives. He's known as the boss of the bosses here in France. Not a favorite amongst the trade unions, must be said. So it's interesting to have his opinion on the current status quo. And he says that, you know, these pockets of resistance that we're seeing in France, well, it's a France that's scared, that hasn't received an adequate explanation about why this change to the labor reform is important. They're not enthusiastic about the future. They don't have his hope in the future. But you can see this quote here on the front page. He has a lot of hope in the future. France has everything going for it to succeed.
Prime Minister Valls is in the hot seat today. He's drawn a lot of criticism, hasn't he, for just being too harsh over this protest movement.
That's right. He's really getting the finger pointed at him today. If we take a look at Le Parisien, it says that Manuel Valls is walking a tightrope that is starting to fray. And Libé follows up on this and says that Valls is really facing a major authority crisis. Now, throughout his career, Manuel Valls has been applauded for his firmness, but today he's paying for it. And you can see all these figures and everything. This is a poll, actually, that was carried out in Libération today. Very interesting. Only 17% of people today have a positive opinion of Manuel Valls. 34% of people say they used to have a good opinion of him, but they feel disappointed largely because of the way he's dealt with the whole labor reform fiasco. And then you have 39% of people, they've never had a good opinion of him after all.
Now, the left wing is in the spotlight today. In fact, after that surprise announcement that there would indeed be a primary ahead of next year's presidential election. Dipti was telling us about that yesterday. The candidates, they're already lining up for action, aren't they? That's
right. And the right-wing paper, Le Figaro, is loving this. Let's take a look at the front page today. You can see it's talking about how this primary has sharpened rivalries within the left. Several candidates seem like they want to challenge President François Hollande, but it's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black when you see what's happening within the opposition, Les Républicains party, and you can count on Libération, the left-wing paper, to take a look at that. There are a large number of candidates for the primary within the opposition party as well. And you can see a left-wing paper, Libération, really loving the fact that there's a new one as well. And you can see a cartoon of her there. Michèle Alliot-Marie, you might remember her. She was Nicolas Sarkozy's defense minister. And Libération says she's kind of jumped the gun, though, because she says she doesn't want to take part in the primary, but she will be a presidential candidate.
Oh, OK, fine. Paper's also focusing on the alarming results of a study on air pollution today.
That's right. This is really incredible. Let's take a look at Le Figaro. Air pollution is the third cause of mortality in France after tobacco, and alcohol. You can see the figure there. It's responsible for 48,000 deaths a year in France. So this is air pollution, but particularly the particles of pollution in the air. They're responsible for 9% of deaths nationally. And that corresponds to a decrease in life expectancy by 2 years for people who are just 30 years old. And of course, that gets worse and worse as you get older.
Going to end on a lighter note, sort of anyway. This is on the baccalaureate, the big end-of-year exams that come at the end of high school.
That's right. The bac is a big deal, especially if you're in high school. Last Friday was the English exam. You told me that your daughter took this exam.
Yeah.
But there was one question on this test that students didn't like very much. In fact, 13,000 people have signed a petition asking for the question to be removed, to not be counted. You can read about it here in LUPS. What was this question? Well, for us Anglophones, it might be quite simple. It was, where is Manhattan? In English, of course. So the answer, of course, is New York City. New York.
Yeah.
And apparently, though, that was a trick question for a lot of students. And do keep in mind, most of the students are on average 18 years old. So the fact that so many people couldn't answer this question has also drawn a lot of criticism. Lots of people took to the internet to mock these poor students who may have just been stressed out. Some people said that it took them like an hour to figure out the answer to this question. But some took to social media and said that this petition was actually the dunces petition.
Oh, what if they put US, though? Because that's right as well.
It might be a good answer.
Yeah, controversial at the baccalaureate. I'm not quite sure what my daughter put. I shall ask her when I get home. I'll ask her when I get home. Flo, thank you very much. Flo Villeneuve with the papers on France 24.